Welcome to this Heart and Stroke Foundation of Barbados special event here on UWITV in collaboration with the Barbados Childhood Obesity Prevention Coalition. I am your host, Kenneth Connell, the Deputy Dean of Recruitment and Outreach in the very special Faculty of Medical Sciences here at the Cayfield campus. More importantly are my guests, who I will introduce to you from furthest on my left. We have Professor Winston Moore, who is the Deputy Principal of the UE campus, not a member of the Faculty of Medical Sciences, but right across the street from us. Welcome, Winston.
Thank you.
We also have joining us online, virtually, we used to share an office space, I think, Professor Alafia Samuels, who is former director of the George Allen Chronic Disease Research Center at the UWI in Barbados, and obviously also member of the WHO STAG on NCDs. Hopefully she explains what that is. Welcome, Alafia, and I know you're joining us from a cooler place.
Right,
also,
thank you.
Miss Stacia Whitaker, Deputy Chairperson of the Barbados Childhood Obesity Prevention Coalition. I have been given permission to just call it BCOP from now on, right? And also, who's a registered dietitian nutritionist with the Ministry of Health and Wellness here in Barbados. And last, but legally not least, Mr. Pierre Cook, Research Fellow here in the Law and Health Research Unit in the Faculty of Law. Shall we say the second best? Second best faculty here at the UE Cayfield campus. And our guests are all geared up to share their thoughts on a very important matter, the real cost of healthy food. And here are some alarming statistics for you, the audience, to digest. Firstly, 1 in 5 of adult Barbadians has diabetes mellitus. Just consider that, 1 in 5. 31% of children are either obese or overweight. And we now have recent data showing that this may be as high as 42% in the recent survey done in 2020. More alarming, if I haven't convinced you as yet, 66% of adults are overweight. And 33%, a third of us, are obese. NCDs cause 80% of all deaths in this country. And although we are reflecting on this from a Caribbean standpoint, just ponder that for a moment. Many of you are joining us across our sister islands in the region. I want to say a special welcome to colleagues, friends, and family joining us in Jamaica. Our thoughts and prayers are with you at this time, but thanks for making the effort to join in this conversation. So let's set the scene. This isn't just an academic discussion, is it? There is a legal framework to this. So, health is a human right.
Yeah.
Pierre?
Yeah. So the idea of the right to health is that all persons, just by dint of being born, are entitled to the right to health. And that right to health means that your governments, who have ratified international conventions which include that right to health, your governments then have a responsibility to protect that right. They have to put systems in place to ensure that you have access to adequate and nutritious food. So it's not just access to food, but nutritious food. And then when we look at that specific context of children that you mentioned,
right.
In the Convention of the Rights of the Child, they mentioned that children have the right to the highest attainable standard of health care.
So it's really set in the framework, and I am going to assume then that Barbados has signed on to this convention.
The countries in the Caribbean have signed on to the Convention of the Rights of the Child, the International Convention on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights, and both of those include a right to health. And even in our CARICOM Charter, there is a right to health included as well. So I want you to look directly at the audience. This isn't just a desire, this is really a right. It's a right, and you are entitled to it, and you can demand of your governments to ensure that that right is protected, ensured, and fulfilled.
But a right really is actualized in the environment. What are you seeing on the ground, Stacia?
Well, Kenneth, we're seeing more fast food. We're seeing more access to ultra processed foods.
Ultra processed food. So that's the same thing.
Same thing as junk food.
Yeah.
Layman's term. So you're saying that ultra sugary foods or beverages, salty foods, as well as fatty foods. And because these are more accessible, then you're having persons, whether it's families, children, parents, the general public, these are the types of foods that are being consumed more often than not. And we already know the correlation to that. When you eat these type of foods on a continuous basis, then it's going to lead to high risk of many of our non-communicable diseases.
It's not only accessible, it's convenient. I mean, we are here doing this program between 8 o'clock, stay awake. And when we leave here, we might be tempted on our way home, one of us especially, to pull in at a fast food restaurant, right, and just get something quick and easy. So, Alafia, what is out there in terms of Caribbean behavior and attitude towards this? Do you have any data or any research that you've done looking at this?
Yeah, we have done some research in the Eastern Caribbean, Barbados, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Nevis and St. Kitts. And what we're finding is that persons in general know that they are eating unhealthy. They know in general what the healthy things are, but the pressures of life, Stacey mentioned earlier, the question of convenience, price, you can actually buy a fast food meal for cheaper than you can prepare it at home. And a lot of the imports, come in as bulk, and then they are used in the fast food industry, and we get a lot of cheap, tasty food. And of course, don't forget the marketing.
Of course.
Because what is happening is that the marketing makes you buy food that you would not otherwise have bought. So you don't need marketing to go and have breakfast or lunch because your body tells you you're hungry.
Right.
So all of this marketing around fast food is for you to buy more than you would have bought otherwise. That's how the economics work. You spend money on marketing if you're going to get more sales than what you spent on the marketing.
I mean,
so that
you've raised an interesting point. You said that's how the economics works. And I'm just thinking, regardless of one's intention of eating healthily, if the food that is healthy is expensive, you're probably not going to buy it. I mean, you're going to buy cheap food. What is the economics behind this?
Okay, thank you very much. So there are two pieces of statistics, and as an economist, I walk with my statistics, right?
Right.
So the first statistic...
He literally has the statistics here on the set.
The first statistic is that 78% of all of the food that we consume in Barbados is imported.
78%.
78%. So that's the first statistic.
Right.
So if import prices are going up, that therefore means that the prices that you are seeing in terms of your typical food basket will also be increasing. Then the second statistic is that if you look at the tariff or the duties of ultra-processed foods, the average tariff of ultra-processed foods is around 35%.
Right.
The average tariff on what we consider healthy foods, fresh fruits and vegetables, around 45%.
Okay, so to the listener, I know you've heard a lot about tariffs in the last few months. What exactly are tariffs?
Tariffs are essentially a price or a tax that you place on goods that are imported into your country.
I got
so
you.
So if a good landed at the Bridgetown port costing $1 and the tariff is 100%, that means you're going to put $1 on top of that $1. So the good then therefore will enter Barbados costing $2.
But that's serious because you just said 78% of what we eat is imported.
Exactly. So what essentially is happening is that your tariff regime is pushing people into the direction of eating in this particular way, eating these high caloric foods or these ultra processed foods.
Right. Because it's cheap and it's accessible. Is that really what's happening though on the ground, Stacia?
Well, unfortunately, yes, you're seeing more of these food establishments, or you're going into your regular supermarkets, you're seeing more aisles that are filled with these type of foods.
So someone must be purchasing this stuff, right?
Yeah, there's a demand for it. So hence, it continues to have persons, they're buying, they're consuming these type of foods. And just like Winston said, if it's cheaper, then, and it's there, guess what? I'm going to buy it, I'm going to take it home, I'm going to consume it. My children will consume it. And there lies the problem.
I mean, what I'm hearing between yourself and Alafia is something very interesting. One is there is this concerted effort for clever marketing to get us to buy things and eat things that we ordinarily would not consume. And secondly, the food itself, if such it can be called, has been so chemically packaged that it's trying to get you to eat more of it in any case.
On a regular day.
On a regular day, right? I mean, I could never imagine this, but there are some people who literally, they crave fast food. Like they just finished eating the home cooked meal and they crave fast food. And that's phenomenal. Is that what you're seeing in Lafayette?
Yes, this is absolutely correct. What is happening also, we have to remember, is that these foods are manufactured to create addiction.
Yes.
And I use the word addiction advisedly. They are manufactured to create addiction, and then they are marketed to make you want not even just the food, but more and more of it. So, you know, we say anybody can eat anything once a week or once a month.
Right.
That's you, whether you eat it or not. The question is, what do you eat every day? And if you are eating ultra-processed foods every day, I can guarantee you, your life is going to be shorter.
Of course, and you're going to be in that 80% premature deaths that we just discussed. But you know, I guess all is not lost, because there must be some solution where you can make these unhealthy things more expensive, more difficult, with various measures. Various economic measures.
Yes, but I want to touch on this issue before we move away from
Sure.
this point. The fact that we're saying that persons are purchasing these foods, we sort of have to look at the income demographic as well. Now, on average, most Barbadians, the typical Barbadian, spends 40% of their budget on food.
Right.
Now, that's for the average Barbadian.
Right.
If you look at low-income individuals now, that number goes up even higher. You're talking about 70, 80, 90% of your budget sometimes will be just spent on just food.
70% on food. Wow.
Yeah, so it therefore means that any increase in food prices has an impact on low-income individuals. So we have to look at any policy change in that context. So if we're saying we want to increase the price of ultra-processed foods, that will have an impact on low-income households. It has a policy goal that we have in mind in terms of switching consumption patterns, but it also has a sort of impact on low income or distributional impact. To use a sort of big word, a distributional impact. It has an impact on low income households.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, then the only way this is going to work is if you also make healthy foods affordable and cheaper.
Yeah, so it therefore means you have a sort of a multi-dimensional problem. So you have to look at both the supply side as well as the demand side. And the supply side, the important part of the supply side is bringing our farmers into the mix. Our farmers, our food production, our food security is a key part of this whole equation. Because if you think about the ultra-processed foods, those are not foods that are produced by farmers, right?
Right.
Those are foods that are manufactured overseas and imported into Barbados. So what we want to do is work with our farmers to make sure that they can supply the types of foods that we want in the quality and the quantity that is desired by households.
Yeah, and that whole desire is a major thing. All right, let me just use an example. Let's talk lettuce, because this is one of my pet peeves, right? I love romaine lettuce. I know that I can't. That's imported, right? But what about locally produced lettuce? That's going to call for change in behavior. How is that going to come about?
And that's just essentially working with our agricultural producers, because we also, instead of romaine, there's also royal oak, which is actually pretty good. We have some local versions of romaine lettuce as well. Not all of your romaine lettuce has to be imported.
Okay.
So it therefore means you just have to work with your farmers, and we have a good illustration of this through our local farmer cooperatives. And if we can really build out those local farmers cooperatives, empower them, help them to understand the benefits and the rationale for working together, we can actually tackle that supply side problem that we've been mentioning.
Yeah. So, I mean, changing eating behavior is not easy, but it's your specialty. I don't know how you do it. I try and I fail 100% of the time to get patients to change their eating behavior. And the reason I feel so comfortable in saying that, I just refer them to you guys. So tell me, what are some of the things that you might have to do to get people at an individual and even now at a national level, because you're part of BCOP,
Yes.
to change behavior?
Well, first thing, you have to see what level of change they're at, because it is indeed a behavior change, and we all know behavior is not easy to change, especially when it comes to food and appetite and economics. What can I afford? What can I purchase? How can I prepare? All of these are questions that needs to sit well with the individual or the community. So we're not planning anything, whether it's policy or anything, unless we understand our demographic.
We have to understand
we have to
demographics.
understand them.
It starts there.
It starts there, absolutely. And it's not going to happen overnight. And it has to be practical. I'll hit home at that constantly. It has to be practical.
And indigenous.
Alafia is right. We are fighting against great marketing, billion-dollar marketing. So hence you're seeing people gravitating to the unhealthy foods. And we're going to have to hit that just as hard. Make it accessible, make it affordable, make it attractive. Show how you can still prepare, a single mother can still prepare a meal in a
and still
short
get
time,
it done.
and it still be nutritious, because that's what we want, to nutritious foods.
Would you believe it? We've got a question already. Alafia, this is coming directly to you, by the way. This first question. How would you describe the current state of nutrition and diet in the region?
Bad and worsening.
Bad and worsening.
COVID,
I like that.
Yes. Because the COVID pandemic actually reversed some of the gains that we had made. Because as you remember, with COVID and so on, you had all of these restrictions. And the same thing is happening now in Jamaica post-hurricane.
All right.
Because it's a lot, it's a lot of the tin food and so on. All the agriculture in the West has been, it's in ruins. You've seen the pictures.
Yeah.
So this is going to mean that people are more dependent on fast food. But I wanted to make a point though.
Sure, go ahead.
We keep talking about nutritious food. We need to talk about delicious food. Too many of our healthy foods don't taste good, people. We need to do more on our side to offer positive examples of nutritious, delicious food.
I'm not sure if this question came from you. Well, it came from the audience, but it certainly is listening to what you've just said, although it's targeted towards Stacey. It says, can a nutritionist really share the difference between healthy and ultra-processed foods?
Yes, healthy foods. We want more wholesome foods. Any food, from the time you pick it off the tree or take it out of the earth, is a process there. But our challenge is that we're looking at the ultra part of it, where we're taking out all the fiber, we're reducing a lot of the nutrient content, we're adding in a lot of additives and ultra processed, as in sugars and all of those things that we already said is really causing a lot of problems.
It's causing a lot of problems.
And like Alafia said, is it that healthy food is not tasty, or is it that our taste buds has become so, adulterated with these ultra seasonings and flavors and additives
and fats
that we no longer can tell that,
it's not healthy.
Yeah.
It's a lot of food for thought. And of course, during this break, go get some water, get some steps in, and we will be right back. Can you imagine that the first segment is over already on this Heart and Stroke Foundation, the real cost of healthy food? We'll be right back.
The key psychological tactics would be the emotional and behavioral influences persons, marketers would use to influence children. Certain age groups, like the younger age group, obviously, they're vulnerable. Because they're vulnerable to what they see, they can't cognitively decipher, the underlying targeted information. Sometimes they just attract with color. Sometimes you have toys attached to them. They have the billboards, they have the signage. Sometimes person have sponsorship. Let us sponsor a particular event so that children can see our product, so that they can become accustomed to this product, so that even after they're not in school, this would be a choice. Children don't have the capacity to make these wise decisions. So I think that the schools, the environments, or parents, we have to make sure that they are educated, because they have to make some informed choice, and looking to see how best we can find strategies, small tactics that we can use as well to combat, these negative influences and these tactics used by marketers.
My name is Keyshawn Smith. I like plantain plants, tomato plants, cucumber plants too. It was great.
A message from the Heart and Stroke Foundation of Barbados and Partners.
We're back on the set after your delicious but hopefully nutritious break. My panelists are on change, but I'll reintroduce them to you. Professor Winston Moore is Deputy Principal here at the Cave campus. Ms. Stacia Whitaker, Deputy Chairperson of BCOP. For those who are now joining, that's Barbados Childhood Obesity Prevention Coalition. It's a mouthful. And she's also a registered dietitian and nutritionist. Immediately to my left is Mr. Pierre Cook, Research Fellow. And joining us virtually is Professor Alafia Samuels. Welcome back to the set. And before we went to the break, we were talking about changing behavior, and I just thought there must be some kind of measures that could be put in place, like taxation, for instance. Barbados has had the initially pretty unpopular sugar sweetened beverage tax. Any comments on that?
Well, it was unpopular, but the good news is that it was
There is good news.
Yeah, there was good news. It actually changed behavior a little bit. There are two key things I wanted to highlight. The first one is that we did see a switch in terms of consumption patterns away from sugar sweetened beverages towards water.
Right.
So persons started purchasing a lot more bottled water, and when they go to the supermarket, when they go to the gas station.
Because it was cheaper.
Because it was cheaper, right?
Yeah.
The second thing is that we saw the introduction of new varieties of low sugar or alternative sweetened products on the market. And that was actually something that came about after the introduction of the sugar sweetened beverage
So it
tax.
didn't only change consumer behavior, it changed manufacturer behavior as well, which is what we also wanted,
which is what we want to encourage. We don't want to reduce manufacturing activity, because manufacturing activity results in jobs and results in foreign exchange earnings. But what we want to do is ensure that everyone is healthy as they do consume these products.
Yeah, I totally get what you're saying. And I know that most people listening are probably saying, no, this was just a lot of extra money for the administration. It didn't actually change behavior. But we have data showing that this behavior changed for both consumer and manufacturer, which was the intention.
Yeah, and the other thing to remember, though, is NCDs are actually quite costly to treat. So NCDs take up a large proportion of our health budget. We spend a lot of our budget on two things: education and health. And education generates growth in economic activity. Health just makes sure that your citizens are healthy in order that they can work, right?
Yeah.
But if your citizens have NCDs, they can't work. Unfortunately, you're just treating them to make sure that they continue having a reasonable quality of life.
Or can't work effectively.
So what the tax revenues from the sugar sweetened beverages has done is it actually has sort of reduced the burden on government in relation to treating or paying for all of the costs associated with NCDs.
Got you. This question is definitely for you, Winston, and it says, I know this because it has fiscal in it. Regarding fiscal policy, is there anything the private sector or government can do to make healthy food more affordable in Barbados?
Okay, so remember earlier when I told you that there's this gap between ultra-processed foods and fresh foods? So the tariff on ultra-processed foods was around 35%, and the tariff on fresh foods was 45%. That's a simple change. All we need to do is switch that around. So make the tariff, the average tariff on fresh foods around 35%, and the average tariff on ultra-processed foods
that
around 45%.
seems like a no-brainer. Why would it be higher for healthier foods?
No, this is why I said it's a multi-dimensional problem, because the reason why the tariffs are higher.
Economics 101.
Yes, and I love this because I don't get to lecture that often now. So the reason why the tariffs were introduced in recent times was actually to protect some local farmers, because we want to encourage local production of foods, of fruits and vegetables. So we therefore give them a little bit of a leeway by making the price of imported fruits and vegetables a little bit higher by putting a tariff in place. But what we have to do is make sure that when we do put that tariff in place, it doesn't switch behavior towards those ultra-processed foods.
I got you, yeah. And of course, having that behavioral change is important in the consumer, because the consumer will drive the market, right?
Yeah, exactly. Most of the economic activity in Barbados is driven by consumption.
Yeah.
Approximately 70% of economic activity is driven by consumption. So, the consumer is king.
Yeah, yeah. And queen, just for those of you out there watching.
King and queen.
So Alafia, I was thinking as what Winston was saying just now, and thinking, do people out there really know or even care about this unhealthy eating? Or do they kind of just see it as, this is just us in the health space making much ado about nothing?
No, I think there are some people, especially mothers, who are concerned about what they are feeding their children. They want to do better. In fact, the mothers keep saying to us, yes, you keep talking about what not to eat, but you're not telling us what to eat.
We hear that quite a lot.
So the mothers, yes, the mothers are waiting for us, everybody, but they are waiting for us to give them better guidance as to what to eat, how to prepare it, and how to make it delicious. I'm coming back to the delicious thing, because the thing is that, yes, it is true that the marketing and the consumption of a lot of fast foods has caused our palate to change a little bit.
Yeah.
But yes. But at the same time, we are not competing in the marketplace with delicious alternatives. And I'm challenging us to really start to do more around, the tariff question, and, lowering the tariffs is very important. But we also need to engage with our chefs and dietitians and nutritionists. Even in the hotels, if you have a conference in a hotel and you ask them for a healthy meal, they give you steamed fish.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
We need a culture of delicious, healthy food.
Well, you also then need nutritionists and dietitians involved in this angle. I mean, to be honest, I agree with exactly what you're saying. When I think healthy, I think two things, basically. This is difficult to prepare. And secondly, this is really not going to taste as good as the fast food I'm going to buy. It's not going to be as satisfying, but I'm going to eat it because I look kind of stupid being on a program like this and eating something unhealthy. So what's the role of nutritionists and dietitians in changing this so that, healthy looks attractive? How do you make healthy sexy?
Yeah, so it really takes working with the individual, working with the communities, and just showing them that we can still make food tasty. We can still have our foods sweet. We can use those sweeter fruits. We can use those fresh herbs and seasonings rather than just the regular salt and seasoned salts. Mm-hmm. And we can still use healthy fats as well. So there's a way that you're having tasty, vibrant, delicious, wholesome foods. And like I would say, you still want it to be affordable, accessible, and easy to prepare.
Right.
And like we all are saying, we want it to be tasty because there is the notion that if it's healthy, it's tasteless.
Right.
And people are turned off from the get-go with that concept alone.
Okay. I'm going to challenge you there. Let's not just put responsibility in the household. Mm-hmm. What about manufacturers?
Yes.
Do they not have responsibility to change their products so that they're healthier and tasty as well?
Of course.
Rather than just saying, okay, if you want to consume less sugar, just add water to my really sweet drink. do they not have a responsibility to reformulate?
Yeah, like Pierre said, it's part of a human right, and all of that feeds into it as well. So yes, they can reformulate their formulations that they have gradually, obviously, over time. They can reduce the sugar, they can reduce the salt, they can look for other alternatives as well to make that taste still palatable for those who will be purchasing or want to continue to purchase. And we've seen it in other parts of the world. So it's not impossible indeed. It's just really continuing the conversation, having the research out there, showing that it is possible, and then putting things in place where persons can still see that food is tasty, it's still attractive. It doesn't have to be boring colors, boring packaging, but it can still be beautiful, bright, and obviously we get into the main thing, nutritious and full of nutrients.
The one thing that you always hear is, this unhealthy food is really just our culture, especially at that summer period, like August. And so how do you change the whole disconnect between unhealthy and culture?
Yeah. And I want to go back to something Alafia said as well. It's not that there's no place, and I'm probably going to get lashes for this, there's no place for some of
We're all friends here.
For some of these foods that we may love, that doesn't love us as much. It's not that there's not a place for them, but the challenge is that we're over consuming these things on a daily basis because they're available, they're affordable, and they're accessible.
Yeah.
So then how do we, again, it's multifaceted, how do we work in this realm where we can still have foods that are healthier being pushed at us more often on our shelves, in our hotels, with our manufacturers also providing those options? That is a bigger question that I know we all need to answer if you truly want to see a change in our environment.
It is multifaceted, and the law plays an important role. Now, Pierre, you are a research fellow in the Law and Health Unit. Tell us how do you add to this kind of as healthy food as a right?
Yeah, so I mean, law in this space always feels like an uncomfortable fit.
Yeah, that's why we have him seated here.
When people think about law and its relationship with food, they necessarily see it as the taxes that you mentioned. So they think that governments are going to impose taxes to increase the price of sugar-sweetened beverages, and that's it. But there is a principle or theory of law that says that law is normative, in the sense that it creates the environment to change behavior. So if you have regulations that say if you're importing food into Barbados, they must meet this specific standard, this specific content, it must have these specific nutrients, then you create the food environment so that the healthy choice is not only the best choice, but it's an available option. So governments then have to understand their responsibility to put those regulations in place to promote public health objectives. Now, it doesn't come at the front-facing end of this kind of advocacy.
Right.
It happens in the back door.
But it's important, though, because it really does set that framework.
It is, and it ensures that through several regulations, not a single sweeping bill that says this is our food bill and everything is in here, but within your agriculture bill, your educational conversations, all of those policies must also include that thought that you as a government have an obligation to protect, ensure, and fulfill the right to health.
I mean, that's just an eye-opener, because law is often not even in the room, let alone at the table of public health policy. When you're saying, your argument is that, well, law needs to have a very strong voice at this table, actually.
Not only the strong voice, but it means that governments across our region must remember their obligation.
Right.
And I think that's where civil society organizations and member of the public come in to say, well, I have a right to help.
Keeping them accountable.
And I know that you as the government have to ensure that there's certain measures in place to ensure that I can have healthy food, I can have adequate health care, and so there needs to be that accountability mechanism throughout.
So hold our governments accountable for things that they've signed on to,
They've signed on to.
Yeah. And so I know we've covered a lot here with the taxation and changing behavior and changing the environment. A lot of the conversation has been focused at several different levels, and I think that's important, both at the individual, but also at the level of the government and administration. If you had to say, which one would kind of get the speedometer moving more, which one is it? The individuals or at the higher level?
Oh, wow. That's like what comes first, the chicken or
the
the
chicken or the egg,
kind of
right?
question, because I mean, like, we're all here saying it has to be, everybody got to be on board at some point.
Yeah.
And, we got to target our families, the average individual householder. We have to target them, our manufacturers, our policymakers, our education system. It has to be a part and parcel of our school system, teaching, changing these behaviors. Our health system, prenatal, postnatal, let's start there. Let's have the conversation from the get-go, you know, and it has to be a fabric all through everything that we do if we're really serious about addressing this health crisis within our region.
That's difficult at an individual level, though, isn't it? Alafia, what are your thoughts on that?
Yes, it is. Yes, the individual takes responsibility, but the major responsibility is for the government to create a healthy environment. And I just wanted to make the point in terms of health and the law, remind people that CARICOM government signed on to eliminate industrially produced trans fats from our diets to have legislation by the end of 2025.
And we are
this
in
was agreed
2025.
We are, exactly, and there are very few countries in the Caribbean that are going to meet those obligations. So my question to PAIR is, can we sue those governments that have not met the obligation that they said they were going to do?
So that becomes difficult. I mentioned earlier that the right to health, you wouldn't see specifically within our constitution saying you have the right to health. So it means that you have to go through this long-winded channel of saying you as the government are responsible for protecting my right to health. So whilst it's easy to say that you can sue and say, well, as the government, you have the obligation, it's not a straightforward litigation process. I think...
Yeah, but the trans fat, though, the trans fat, they said they were going to do the trans fat.
No, this is where the accountability comes in.
Right.
Because governments have signed on to the Convention of the Rights of the Child. They've signed on to the International Convention on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights. There's several rights within there that we are entitled to, but we don't demand protection of, or we don't demand access to. So in the same way that they've signed on to this, it can lay seating for the next 5 to 10, 15 years, unless we as people then hold them accountable. It can happen two ways. Now, there's the social aspect of us as advocates getting up and speaking, but there's also the law courts. Now, there's never been litigation of that kind in this region.
Yeah.
It's been successful in other places, but oftentimes you see it successful in places where there's an explicit right to health within their constitutions. Now, there's another conversation about that. We don't.
We don't have that.
We don't.
But, I mean, let's cut through the fat here. Literally, trans fats, there's nothing nutritionally valuable about them, right? So this should be a no-brainer, like a low-hanging fruit. Poor choice of word, granted. However, I mean, we should be able to eliminate trans fats from our diet.
Absolutely.
You know?
But you see, it's such a big part of our processed foods, back to those ultra-processed foods. So it helps stabilize and shelf life of many foods. So it has been very difficult. I've even seen where some manufacturers would say, no trans fat per serving.
No trans fat per serving.
But then when you look at the serving, you're probably going to eat 2 or 3. The average person is going to eat 2 or 3 servings. So by the time you consume that, you're back at trans fat.
This has certainly provoked the audience because I am seeing the questions coming in. Go for a break, have some water, get some steps in. We will do so on the studio as well. We'll be right back after the break. See you in a few minutes.
The school nutrition policy was created to foster a healthier school environment. Yet, everywhere we look, we still see the marketing of unhealthy foods and drinks in our schools. This influences children to choose unhealthy foods and drinks, which will make us sick as adults. If these foods are being removed from schools to improve our diets, why are they still being marketed to us? 31% of children are overweight or obese. Protect us. It's time to ban marketing of unhealthy foods and drinks in schools.
A message from the Heart and Stroke Foundation of Barbados and Partners.
Hi, I'm Dr. Kia Lewis, General Practitioner and Healthy Lifestyle Advocate. Good nutrition starts at home. So this school year, I want you to consider packing healthy, nutritious snacks and lunches for your children to carry, rather than having them buy them at school. And don't just pack things you think they should have. Have a discussion and come up with things that you both know they will enjoy.
A message from the Heart and Stroke Foundation of Barbados and Partners.
Heavy marketing of ultra-processed foods within our school setting is very dangerous towards our helping our children to make healthy food choices. These foods are often high in fats, sugar, and salt, and this alone can encourage children to make these food choices more often. It also impacts how they will choose between a healthier food compared to this processed food. In the long run, this can result in children becoming obese or coming down with other diet-related diseases such as type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular diseases that can also go within adulthood. It's important to restrict the ultra-processed foods within our school settings so that we can have healthier children for years to come.
Welcome back to the set of The Real Cost of Healthy Food. The Heart and Stroke Foundation of Barbados, Barbados Childhood Obesity Prevention Coalition, BCOP. Panel discussion. We've had so much food for thought, literally, during the break. We didn't get any steps in, but Winston, during the break, you mentioned about food cooperatives, which is something that I never heard of. So break that down.
So cooperatives is something that I think most Barbadians are familiar with because we're familiar with the concept of a financial cooperative, which is a credit union. Mm-hmm. So if you're a credit union, you're the owner of the financial institution. Your savings are part of the shares within the organization. With a food cooperative, the farmer is the owner of the food co-op, and the farmers collaborate to ensure that we don't get the fluctuations in agricultural prices that we see from time to time. Because fluctuations in agricultural prices have, no one likes those. Yeah. So it increases the prices for the consumer, and when prices fall, it reduces the profits for the farmer. So what a number of farmers across the world have done is that they've opened food cooperatives where you can actually go into their co-op and you can buy food from their store. And usually the prices are a lot cheaper. It also encourages the farmers to work together. So it's not about replacing the traditional retailer, because they're still going to be selling to the traditional retailer and the hotels. Right. But it's about helping the farmers to start working together to prevent that fluctuation that we see from time to time. Which really annoys consumers. Yeah, and provide some options for consumers. So the consumer can go into the food co-op and get their fruits, get their vegetables at a cheaper price, and instill those nice habits into their kids as well. Yeah, yeah. And I guess this really is indigenous, dating back to traditional market day in our country, where you go and you get the fresh fruits, they're seasonal. What you mentioned is so accurate. You have to choose which week you buy which vegetable or because you're not sure. The price fluctuates significantly. We're back here talking about solutions though, and I just was so curious what might be some solutions do you think that might be driven by nutritionists in this landscape?
Yeah, so we want to get there are different solutions. Right. We can look at the same cooperative. We can look at household being more involved, whether gardening is part of their thing. Backyard gardening is an option. Frequenting those outdoor markets more often. Buying in season. Buying in season, you're going to have a cheaper product. You're going to have a fresher, more wholesome product. So you can, maybe this week is okras, that's fine. Buy some okras. We can teach you or show you, there can be programs to teach you how to store those okras for a longer period when they're not that accessible. Next week might be sweet potatoes. So ways of shopping when it's in season, and just making those small changes. Using more whole grains, those porridges that we move away from. Yeah. It's not that pricey.
I hate them. But they're healthy, they are healthy. Yeah.
And just using our fresh fruits when they're available.
And in season, right?
In season.
This question has come in just for you then. Literally just come in. Are there any plans to utilize more nutrition coaches? I think all nutritionists are nutrition coaches, by the way. You guys are excellent. I'm not just saying that because she's on the set. To tackle the healthy eating issue. Any plan to utilize nutrition coaches?
Yeah, certainly. To have more dietitian and nutritionists on the ground, whether it's in our school system, from our nurseries right up, working in our community centers, and at our polyclinics, because the conversation has to go on. It has to connect again with whom is in front of you. Those groups, whether it's teenagers, whether it's our primary schoolers, or whether it's our preschoolers. But we have to be realistic. I will I will say that all the time, because as a nutritionist, we can't separate ourselves.
Right.
If I'm in front of you and you're a single parent on a low income, I have to speak your language. I have to see where I can start with you, or where we can start together rather, to see how you can incorporate. Maybe you don't cook. Maybe you are one of those persons that gonna buy the fast food. Then
Notice
let's talk
she's
about
looking directly at me.
So let's talk about how we can do that in a healthier way.
In a healthier way.
Yeah. So is really meeting the individual where they are.
I'm going to pivot to Lafia, but I want you to really think about, when I get back to you, what can nutritionists do at governmental level? How can you change policy? So Lafia, this question has come through to you. How do I know this? Because it states for Professor Samuels. Okay, given the research highlighted tonight, where does the next actionable step lie to make healthy food more affordable?
More affordable. Well, Winston spoke about the tariff thing earlier, right? I would also like to say, in terms of making it more affordable, that one of the things that has happened in Jamaica is that there is actually fast food, well, she calls it quick service, restaurant that focuses on healthy food. And I am suggesting that this is a model that could be replicated in the rest of the Caribbean. I don't know to what extent in every island, but we need to get our commercial partners on board. And there are some of them who are very concerned. They have children, they have parents with diabetes and hypertension. And I think that if we can show that profit can be made by selling healthy, delicious food, I think that's a very important thing that can be done. I also think that there are ways in which we at home can modify some of the recipes.
For those who
Stacey
cook.
spoke earlier about healthier fats, for example. Substituting things like cottage cheese for, full fat cheese. There are things we can do at home, but I don't want us to lose the focus on the larger environment.
Exactly.
Because it is the larger environment that's going to determine really what happens. It's not individual action alone.
Well, I'll tell you who hasn't lost focus from the larger environment, and that is this parent who sent through I don't know if it's as a comment or a question. Wow, can't believe I'm still hearing about the elimination of trans fats. I thought trans fats was a low-hanging fruit. Those were my words, actually. But why are we still hearing about trans fats? So the elimination of trans fats from our diet has got to be a Caribbean-wide priority. This is something we really do need to push. There is no nutritional value. And it's easy to justify its elimination, right? It's like cigarette smoking. There's no debate on that now. We need to get trans fats out of our diet, ASAP.
Agreed.
Okay,
but
so
I like what Pierre said, and what isn't being done enough is that accountability and that watching of these things coming into our territories. Because in other territories, the Western world, those things are banned. There are a stricter restriction and prevention of those type of products.
But who bans them?
Again, we're going at the government, we're
the
going
administration.
Exactly.
So therefore, we really do need to push as societies to hold our governments really accountable, that this is unacceptable. The same way we ban or it's illegal to import weapons, because we know that violence and gun violence is a public health emergency as well. Importation of unhealthy foods is also a public health emergency, right?
I think though, as part of the conversation, I don't know that a lot of people understand that when at 60, 70, however old, you develop a non-communicable disease,
right?
I don't think many
NCD.
people appreciate that it's not a personal thing. It's not your responsibility alone. It's not your fault alone. I don't think enough persons understand that the food environment that you exist in contribute directly to that end result.
We eat where we are.
So that governments then in our region especially have to regulate the environment.
Yeah.
There are persons who can tell you that if they leave Barbados or the Caribbean and they go to the UK, a Coca-Cola tastes different.
Yeah.
And that's because the
literally tastes
regulations
diluted.
in their countries have changed the formulation of that drink entirely. So our governments then have to make the bold decision to say, well, we understand that this is killing our people and we need to do something about it, put the regulations in place.
It's amazing how regulations change behavior. And then even if you aren't really accustomed to that environment, how your behavior automatically changes. I'll use the example when I was in the UK, I think since you brought up the UK, going to Tesco, this is a popular supermarket chain in the UK, and recognizing everyone in the line at lunchtime had a bottle of water, and me kind of having to slip my, I wouldn't say Jamaican ginger beer, back on the shelf simply because I felt out of place, right? So I ended up drinking more water just because this is what everyone around me were consuming.
And that's the idea I was mentioning earlier about the normative power of law. It creates that behavioral change by setting the environment for everyone. And I think, if you think, for example, the government can say that we're providing access to this thing and that's enough. So we've built roads, we have access to roads, you can use the roads. But no, they had to put systems in place to ensure you use them safely.
Of
so
course.
you have to wear a seatbelt, you have to have a license, your car has to be in a certain condition. So it's not sufficient to say that we have provided access to food. There's food on the market.
Right.
The environment must be regulated.
I got you. So I'm going to ask this question and then I'm going to let each panelist come back with your 2 solutions, 2 recommendations. These have to be succinct, actionable steps. What do you call it? Smart objectives? Okay, right. Smart objectives, right. So here's the question. Well, are there any plans to enforce this in schools, to change the school environment? Who should take that question?
Let me think. Yeah, absolutely. We have our National School Nutrition Policy, and that speaks specifically to having a healthy school environment. And what does that look like? It looks like where we're going to reduce the ultra sugary beverages, and we have our BCHOP that is working, those civil societies that are working towards education, giving options, showing you what an average sugary, ultra sugary drink looks like compared to not. Enforcing and having things like more water, more fresh fruits, and working with our PTAs, working with our teachers. We have a youth arm that goes in and do fantastic work.
You have a youth arm?
Yeah, just working with our children, showing them healthy options. I know it kind of overworking the word healthy, but showing them options, practical fresh fruit, vegetables, whole grains, options that are available. And they're tasty. Because you know with children, you have to make it pretty.
It's either tasty, it has to be tasty, colorful, or it's dumped.
Or it's done, exactly. So this is the perfect environment. And yes, within our schools, we are working to put those things in place.
All right, so let me start with our virtual guest, Alafia. What are 2 kind of concrete solutions, or what are 2 solutions you would have moving forward to tackle this cost of unhealthy foods and changing the food environment?
Okay, so number 1 for me is the trans fat. Because trans fat, you don't taste it, you don't smell it, nobody knows that they're eating it. But all of those pastries and frosting full of trans fat in the Caribbean, not so in high income countries. So that's one thing I would like to do. The second that I would like to propose is that we tax fast food. Nobody needs to eat fast food. You don't have to eat it. Tax the fast food, put a tax on French fries, double the price of French fries.
So double the price of French fries. I want that to sink in. And eliminate trans fats. Winston, your 2 solutions.
I'm going to focus on the supply side.
I figured you might.
Because I think any policy has to focus not just on the demand, but also the supply side as well. And we have to see this policy of changing the consumption habits as one that is intimately linked with our food security policy, our agricultural policy. And I really do think that we need to bring our farmers into the mix. So the whole notion that I put forward earlier of helping to develop food co-ops and helping those institutions, those are really great ways to support farmers to ensure that they can receive a stable price for their good. When they put it on the market, they don't have to worry about there being a glut or an excess supply of the good of the agricultural produce. And they can also open their own farmer cooperatives, retail stores around the country that makes access to these fresh fruits and vegetables a lot easier, because once you provide access at a reasonable price, then people are going to purchase the products. The problem is when you don't have access at a reasonable price, then people look for the fast
the price changes.
food. Yeah. People look for the fast food options. So that's one. And then two, that same tariff
the
gap that I mentioned earlier, I really think that we need to look at how we change that number, that equation that I mentioned earlier, that 35-45. So we should look to see how we can make the high caloric foods a lot more expensive compared to the fresh fruits and vegetables.
And what are your thoughts on even getting manufacturers, or the impact that might have on getting manufacturers to change how they formulate?
Yeah, that's actually a great point, because we did see that with the introduction of the sugar sweetened beverage tax, where we saw a lot more manufacturers using alternative sweeteners. So a tax on maybe these high caloric foods might actually encourage these farmers, maybe encourage fast food restaurants to put more healthier options in place.
The private sector is not the enemy. We need to work with them
because
in terms of
they employ most of us, right?
Absolutely.
So we don't want to tax jobs out of the market. We want to ensure that whatever policy we put in place shifts our consumption patterns towards one that reduces the amount of NCDs that we see in Barbados, while still stimulating growth and development.
Got you. Stacia.
Yes, I want to piggyback on what he said.
That's okay,
all
you're right
right.
next to him.
Eat what we grow and grow what we eat.
I like that.
Make it healthy, make it attractive. We can do frozen dinners with yam and sweet potatoes. We can have our fresh vegetables cut up so that busy mom or dad can just grab and go. We can get our fast food industry showing and having more healthy
fast
local
food.
Yes, just like Alafia said, it's not impossible. We just need to have that conversation and try to see how we can get these things in place.
I'm going to put you on the spot because the holiday season is approaching.
That's fine.
And that's the time when you tend to have a lot of, shall we say, not the best health choices. What are your kind of suggestions for
Well, I can challenge you with that. We do have a healthy way of our Christmas, our festive foods. It's just we eat too much of it. We have our jug of peas, which is high in legumes, you know, fiber. We have our green peas and rice. You know, we might do our turkey, which is a leaner protein. You know, so there are things. We have sorrel, which is loaded with antioxidants.
Oh, yeah.
So it's just, and we use a lot of spices with that. So it's just that we overdo, because obviously it's the holiday and we kind of go overboard. But it's all I would say is to be moderate.
So there are some indigenous healthy options out there, even during the holiday season.
Even during the holiday.
And for us to get this all right, we have to be in the right framework. And the framework is really set by the law.
I think my two solutions I was writing is that I think a lot more work has to be done for persons to understand what this right to health is. And necessarily what it entitles them to. So I think that's something as the Law and Health Research Unit will do a lot more work on in terms of sensitizing and educating people on it.
Do you have public engagement at all? Or?
We're working on that over the next year on developing so that persons within the community we can talk to directly and explain this right to health as a technical concept actually benefits you personally. And in that vein, the second point is to help persons to understand that the personal responsibility has to shift for them to look at governments for their state obligations to protect that right to health. And governments then have to have that political will to put those systems in place. And that's what we're lacking.
And quite often we hear the narrative, you just go out there and get some more steps or eat healthier. But how? The food has to be affordable. It has to be accessible. It has to be delicious. and it has to be attractive, right?
The other point, just to speak to something Dr. Samuel said earlier, is that strategic litigation is something I think we need to look at in the Caribbean.
Yes.
Strategic litigation against companies who are engaging in false advertising, predatory marketing, because again, these are direct tactics that goes against your right to health. So it's something, again, within the unit we can look at to see how we can engage in that across the region to change the legal conversation on health, healthy foods, and what it means to have a right to health.
And that voice needs to be heard louder, definitely.
Yes.
Yeah. So would you believe it? We are at the end of this very tasty, I just love the adjectives, this hour that we've had this evening. But it was healthy, it was delicious. We've had some solutions posited by all of our panelists here this evening. What you, the audience, are going to miss is the after party here on the set, which goes on until midnight. Yeah, the audience just got the panelists just got the memo. We walked with some sleeping bags. We hope you've enjoyed the discussion. But on a serious note, we hope that you appreciate the right to healthy, nutritious foods. This program has been brought to you by the Heart and Stroke Foundation of Barbados, the Barbados Childhood Obesity Prevention Coalition. My esteemed panelists have been Professor Winston Moore, Deputy Principal here at the very picturesque Cave Hill campus, as well as Ms. Stacia Whitaker, who is the President of the Barbados Childhood Obesity Prevention Coalition, and a registered dietitian and nutritionist, Professor Lafia Samuels, who is the former director of the George Allen Chronic Disease Research Center, joining us remotely in her holiday, as well as Mr. Pierre Cook, who is attorney at law. I always wanted to say that on national television, as well as research fellow, Law and Health Research Unit here at the Faculty of Law. Have a good evening. We've given you a lot of food for thought. Think about it and think about your responsibility, but think about holding the administration to their responsibility as well.